Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the CanEx webinar series. This is our third iteration, and we're going to start off with a fireside with the one and only Bruce Linton of Cannabis and Psychedelic fame now. We're very excited to introduce this topic across the board, both with the fireside and the panel discussion that will follow. Obviously, because it's cutting-edge technology and cutting-edge science, but again, I think with cannabis, it offers so much hope and promise to people who have suffered with certain ailments for so long, and that traditional and modern medicine has not yet been able to fully address that. It's an exciting opportunity to be a part of that, that process and that journey to bring this to the people that need it the most. So that being said, Bruce, it's great to see you again. But how has COVID, impacted you and your portfolio companies?
Well, those are two totally different things. So I would say, me personally, I feel like I've lost about 45 years, 50 years of my age. Like I'm much younger. As far as the companies, it really, it's actually been generally very good for all of them in different ways. So obviously, if you're an essential service in the cannabis industry, that's been quite very good. So Gage, others like that. In terms of what we'll call neuromedicines, so MindMed, it's been a good time in that they've been able to do a lot of work and focus, and it's a distributed company, so they don't have a head office. They have people everywhere. They had to make sure their systems work together. And then they've had companies that are in the space become visible and go public, like Compass. And that sort of gives you a strong gust of wind. What things am I involved with in the psychedelic space? So I don't know if we want to hit that. Like, why would anybody do that? Like, why when I left Canopy, was fired, why did I immediately jump and look for things in what I would call neuromedicines, science-based things which have had prohibitionist bias against them? And the reason was that it was fairly evident there was a lot more academic work and scientific endeavor had been applied to the space of neuromedicines and psychedelics, if you will, than had ever been done for cannabinoids.
What other stakes do you have in mushroom-related, psychedelic-related businesses?
Yeah, so well, Red Light Holland, I participated in that because I like the leadership, but I also like the fact that what they're going to do is basically make truffles the right way, broadly available, and in a microdosing packaging, so that if you go to the Netherlands or you're from Europe, you're going to get this product and you're going to use it so that maybe it assists you in diminished anxiety or whatever that you feel you want to use it for. And it's there's a really smart group of researchers up in Denmark at a company called Octarine. And I invested in and interact with the Taji and the crew fairly often because they know how to make, you don't have to say GMO in the way they make their molecules, but they can make whatever you want. Is that there's a bunch of startups doing the quick shuffle to go to a shell. They're going to get listed. They're going to get one raise of capital in, and they're going to be a retail story that gets told quickly. Some of the guys that made this thing happen will sell their stock out, and then where the company disappears. And what we're going to have is this statement in the general media that it was a flash in the pan. These things, they don't work. And instead, what it was is that the business model was to enrich individuals rather than create value.
Last summer, in the midst of all the turmoil, which you brought up, again, very openly at the beginning of this conversation, you was very bullish on the long-term prospects for Canopy. Are you still long on Canopy?
Well, I still hold quite a bit of it. I think they have a great footprint, but they have great products. They had or have great science. They had a good position medically. They have, I don't know, a couple $2 billion in the bank. But I sat in on part of the AGM the other day, and if you work there now, instead of having 5 or 6 year options, you have 10-year options. And to me, I'd like to have 3-year options. What it means is an option is the right to buy a share at the price the day you joined, and you get a third of it each year if it's a 3-year option. And the reason I like them to be shorter term is one, it makes you motivated to get shit done fast. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Mm-hmm. Second thing is when you're showing your books to the outside world, if you have these really long-term options and you have a volatile stock, they have great products. They had or have great science. They had a good position medically. They have, I don't know, a couple $2 billion in the bank. Well, you know, I sat in on part of the AGM the other day, and if you work there now, instead of having 5 or 6 year options, you have 10-year options. And to me, I'd like to have 3-year options. What it means is an option is the right to buy a share at the price the day you join, and you get a third of it each year if it's a 3-year option. And the reason I like them to be shorter term is one, it makes you motivated to get shit done fast. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
You know, Jamaica is I think the only jurisdiction where psilocybin is not illegal.
Right.
Are you doing any work? Or are you looking to do any work down here? I mean, we have a highly educated workforce at great universities. You know, there's a lot of science opportunity. Is this something you're looking at actively, or would be open to looking at?
Yeah, man. So
you have to bring your bathing suit more often, though.
I've had 2 discussions this week and connected people about the circumstance in Jamaica, which makes, if you're in the Netherlands, Jamaica is the next logical place to go. If you're in Jamaica, Netherlands might be the next logical place to go.
Has the cannabis industry done enough, in your opinion, to promote, and provide opportunities for minorities in the industry?
And so I think what we got to focus on is a much more inclusive, everybody gains, not just who gets to be the boss. Because you know what, I don't know. I think it's pretty easy to make that iconic change, and it still doesn't structurally amend the biggest disadvantaged group. And I love, man, like when those people get that gain, that your cleaner all of a sudden is going, holy mackerel, I just made like 150 grand and I was making 35 grand a year, and now I got like it's like a totally different drive than if it just clunked and you got a different person at the top. This is a great chance to try a social experiment of inclusion on equity. So Doug, keep it going, man. And I hope you have a great session.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Catch up. Take care. All right. Bye-bye. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hand over to Javier Hasse, who's our moderator, and we'll bring on our panelists for the webinar session on psychedelics. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to my much more capable friend, Javier Hasse from Benzinga Cannabis. Javier, over to you, my friend, and thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you for the kind words, and everyone for joining us today. I think we should just jump right in. Our idea here is we have 6 great panelists from every different part of the value creation chain in the psychedelics industry, and what we thought is we touch on all these topics, right, from the start to the very end. So from cultivation to investing and everything in between. So let's just get to it. Let's start with Joe, since it's where it all starts.
Okay.
Cultivation.
Sounds great. Well, my name is Joseph Frank. I'm here in Montego Bay, Jamaica. I'm the lead cultivator and manager for Jamaican operations for Silo Wellness.
Thank you. Peter?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. My name is Peter Holzworth. I'm referred to as the Chief Rainmaker at SVG Micro Research, where we are currently embarking on the discovery of psychedelic effects on homeostasis.
Great. Ruth?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ruth, and I'm very glad to be here. I'm a lawyer. Don't hold that against me. So I've been working in plant-based medicine for several years now. I did work at a publicly listed licensed producer in cannabis, and I've since pivoted into psychedelics. So advising various businesses from startups all the way to those that are going public. And I like to think of myself as a success facilitator.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Doug Drysdale. I'm the CEO of Cybin, Corp. We're a life sciences company developing psychedelic pharmaceutical products for treatmental disorders. Lead program is a phase 2 program aimed at treating major depressive disorder.
I am the co-founder of Able Partners. We're an early stage venture capital firm, and we focus on the positive living space and closing the wellness gap, which is a disconnect between measures of economic well-being and physical and mental well-being. As part of our focus on mental health, we have been investing in the psychedelic space over the last several years and believe that it's one of the most transformative approaches to improving mental health globally.
That's better.
There we go.
Thank you for having me as well. I do a few things in the psychedelics industry, coming from the cannabis industry. So I've founded Rise Wellness Retreat, which is in Jamaica, and that's where you can find out more about that microdosing stuff that Bruce was mentioning. So you can find us down in Treasure Beach on the south coast there. We are currently on hiatus. I've also co-founded Sansero Life Sciences, which is a bioscience company based here in Canada, and we exist to bring to market the formulations of microdose through clinical trials. And I also have a cafe up here in Canada, which is our most recent endeavor, which was sort of what to do when the world gives you no travel and takes you away from Jamaica. You open a cafe apparently called A Good Mushroom, which is at Bathurst College, and we exist to have the conversation about mushrooms and to offer functional mushrooms. Not it's good, but it's not that good. I also have been facilitating ceremony and working with plant medicines and patients for over 10 years, and an advocate for psychedelics across the board.
You know, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Javier Hasse. I'm CEO of Spanish language site El Planteo and managing director for Benzinga Cannabis. We also do psychedelics. And that is one of the debates we'll have today. Why do people tie in cannabis and psychedelics?
I think the common thread that we see is, you know, that these are formerly stigmatized substances. Our fund started out focusing on wellness, and it's sort of ironic that cannabis and psychedelics now both fall under an umbrella of wellness and are showing up on one of our other portfolio companies like Goop. So I think that there are probably more differences than people realize, you know, in terms of psychedelics being more of a service and cannabis being more of a product, but we can go into that later. But I definitely think investors very quickly drew that parallel in terms of these being formerly stigmatized substances.
Psychedelics and cannabis are kind of the opposite of each other. You know, a lot of recreational background with cannabis, but really quite difficult to develop cannabinoids into drugs, often because they work in combination, and developing combination drugs is very challenging. For psychedelics, there's a tremendous science background, thousands of papers, and great research out of major centers like Johns Hopkins and NYU and Imperial College, I think create a really strong platform for future drug development.
Certain psychedelic substances have been studied, you know, in clinical settings, and we have been studying them for decades now, right? So we have certain evidence, you know, scientific evidence that psychedelics can treat certain mental conditions. What do we know, and what do we expect to find out in the next few years? So one of the topics we brought up a couple times already relates to the process, right, of administering, the method, right, the actual session versus just the substance, right, and that seems to be a constant in many of the psychedelic projects. Can we go a little bit into that?
You know, you can take too much of these substances, and it can have adverse effects. And one of the things I think we're challenged with in the professional industry here is manufacturing correct dosage amounts in the microdose setting that will have beneficial long-term lasting effects on homeostasis and mental health. I'd like to highlight Irie actually, because pioneering her efforts in Treasure Island with Rise Wellness has been a great example of how a controlled therapeutic microdose setting can really have long-term lasting effects on a person's mental well-being.
So, you know, synthesis versus extraction, and I know this is a big one here, right? What's the answer? You know, where are we going to get the most, you know, the safest, most stable, most scalable and accessible, affordable psychedelic compounds?
Yeah, like from a drug development point of view, synthesis is always preferred. More control over the substance, more control over purity. We're working on a synthesis process designed to be more efficient, because right now, quite honestly, psilocybin is pretty expensive, and the process is pretty inefficient.
This science is actually still pretty new. And that, as you said, the extraction is very expensive and difficult. Whether you are trying to synthesize the chemical or you are trying to extract it from fruiting bodies, the science just isn't there yet. But I believe in the next couple of years, we're going to have a lot of innovation. We're going to have a lot of people trying different things and trying to find the best way to make it efficient. I've heard of people who are currently synthesizing psilocybin from yeast. They're generating it from yeast. I think that's a brilliant idea. So whether it will be from fruiting bodies, of course, I would love that because I'm a cultivator, or whether it's going to be synthetic, it's difficult to say. But just through the ease of growing the mushrooms and the organic structure, and I agree with Peter and the whole body sort of experience, I definitely think that we'll see how it goes. You know, it's yet to be seen. That this science is actually still pretty new. And that, as you said, the extraction is very expensive and difficult. Whether you are trying to synthesize the chemical or you are trying to extract it from fruiting bodies, the science just isn't there yet. But I believe in the next couple of years, we're going to have a lot of innovation. We're going to have a lot of people trying different things and trying to find the best way to make it efficient. I've heard of people who are currently synthesizing psilocybin from yeast. They're generating it from yeast. I think that's a brilliant idea. So whether it will be from fruiting bodies, of course, I would love that because I'm a cultivator, or whether it's going to be synthetic, it's difficult to say. But just through the ease of growing the mushrooms and the organic structure, and I agree with Peter and the whole body sort of experience, I definitely think that we'll see how it goes. You know, it's yet to be seen.
I think, as everyone has mentioned, it's super interesting and definitely worthy of more research in terms of, what are all the compounds in these natural plants and which of them contribute to the therapeutic benefit. But, as Doug mentioned, naturally derived psilocybin, for example, is unlikely to satisfy the criteria for research grade study drugs. You need a replicable process that guarantees that batches have the exact same quantity, quality, and composition if you're going to take something through an FDA trial, which, as we've mentioned before, is going to be important just in terms of getting scale and getting reimbursement of actually doing the science to prove out what I think we all believe the benefits of these compounds are.
How does the Jamaican government and medical establishments feel about the island attracting attention from psychedelics? And probably that's an Irie question, right?
Yeah, I have some information to share on that. So, currently psilocybin is legal and unregulated in Jamaica. So there has been a call within the government at some point to have a conversation around this. But from what I understand, the pandemic took place right after that. There are different educational institutions who are working with different groups. And I do believe that those conversations have gone through, through the governments as well. There's going to be, a decision to be made in the future around this. And my hope is that before that happens, that we don't take any wrong steps.
We are getting ready to, in the next few months, kick off a clinical study in Jamaica in patients with major depressive disorder. In the run up to that, we've been speaking with the Ministry of Health there, and that there is a willingness there, I think, or maybe a note of caution there with the increased number of clinics and retreats to put some kind of framework around the use of these molecules, these drugs. And that's hence the willingness to support clinical studies there. So I'm not sure which direction that'll go, but I know that there's a desire within the ministry to put a task force together to take a closer look.
Well, thanks again, and we hope to see you again in the next CanEx webinar